Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much. Welcome to Masters of Real Estate. My name is Mathew Owens, and today I have a really good friend of mine on the line, Jeremiah Dalton, that is actually in my health group, where we help a lot of different entrepreneurs become financially fit. Our trainer, Morrow, is like on the money with that stuff and basically has us, giving recommendations. And, both Jeremiah and I have kind of dialed it in, and that's how we met. And we met, because of the training stuff, but now we focus a lot on the real estate side here, and both of us involved in the real estate. And so I'm excited to have him on the line to kind of talk about his journey and how he got started, his trials and tribulations and things like that. So Jeremiah, welcome. Thanks so much for being on the call with me today, man, and on the recording. So can you give us a little background on yourself and, what got you started in real estate, man?
Sure, man. Well, thank you first and foremost for having me on the show. It's a privilege to be here. So what got me into real estate was I had a construction background. I grew up in the construction industry. So
Okay.
I was always gravitated, towards remaking homes, building homes from the ground up. And that was like a passion of mine. But simultaneously, I also had parents who really pushed me to go the traditional education route. To graduate college, they're like, what are you going to do? You can't just get, your bachelor's degree. So, I was considering going to medical school, but I ultimately went the other way and went to law school. And then a few years into law school, I was like, this is just not what I want to do, right? Like, this is not the path I want to take, but I still didn't really have an avenue. Like, I didn't really understand what it was going to take to build real estate, develop it, where to get the money from. So
Right.
all of that stuff seemed so foreign and out of reach for me. So when I graduated law school, it was 2010. At that point, the market had gone through a major transition. So even though in retrospect, that would have been the perfect time to start, right? I just was like, I don't think this is the right time. So
Everybody's running at that time. Yeah.
everyone was running, which was not the good move. It was not a good move on my part. But again, I didn't know.
Right.
And so
Right.
I got a traditional job, and I wound up working in a place that I really didn't like. And I knew I wasn't going anywhere. And that went on for years until I would say about 2015, where, I was buying a piece of real estate here and there, nothing crazy, just kind of, dabbling small rental properties in tertiary areas. And 2015, the end of 2015, I realized this job that I had was never going to go anywhere. I pretty much had plateaued. And so now I needed to make a change. So fixing and flipping full time was always what I wanted to do. And so early 2016, I made the commitment. I said, I am going to do this. I hired a mentor, and about halfway through 2016, with enough knowledge under my belt, went about raising a little bit of capital, took a home equity line of credit against my own house. I said, all right, I'm going to jump into this. And I wound up in the summer of 2016 flipping my first house. And
Nice.
yeah, so I bought that house. I didn't make a ton. I want to say I made 28,000, but at the time, that
Great.
was a game. It was a game changer,
It's like a
right?
third of a salary right there, So
Exactly. So I was like, whoa, and there was a lot of setbacks. I had my contractor, I had a fire, I had to bring somebody else on. And I wound up closing at the end of the year on that property. And I realized wow, holy cow,
this works.
this works. This, I could do this. And so then early 2017, I was, trying to find more properties. And I said, okay, well, I think the capital raising part, I could figure out. I didn't have all the money that I needed, but I knew that part of it wasn't as difficult as it first seemed. Contractors I knew would be an issue, but I started to find some contractors that I think could work. And then the biggest challenge for me, and really what I spent almost all of 2017 trying to figure out, was I was on to my second flip at this point, was how to acquire off-market properties.
Okay.
And so the mentor that I had said, hey, he was basically somebody who bought a lot of MLS properties. And this was right about the time that the REO cycle was dying off, and people really couldn't get those discounted bank properties anymore because everybody was bidding them up.
Right.
So he said, I'm actually working with this vendor that does direct mail on behalf of investors. Why don't you try it? So my second flip, I didn't make as much, maybe about $10,000, but I took all that money and I put into a direct mail campaign. And that, at the time, which now seems great, yielded 2 deals for me. And I was like,
Amazing for 10
yeah,
grand.
10 grand, right? They yielded 2 deals for me. And now, like, it's, it cost me $15,000 just to get 1 deal, right? In terms of marketing costs. So I was like, wow, like,
But
now I'm
you're
starting to.
what kind of price point and profit margins are you seeing though on the back end to make up for that $15,000 in costs, right now?
Usually it's a 4 to 5 X return on that,
Okay. Gotcha.
Now, at the time, right, those same deals that I got 2 deals for 10,000, 5,000 each, they were yielding like 35,000, right? So it
Okay.
was like even an even better
Right.
return.
It was an
But
easier
I
market to buy in for sure in that time.
Exactly. So then that was when it really all started to come together at the end of 2017. I started to find contractors, I started to find deals, and then obviously I went out and I had a little bit of track record doing deals, so it was easier for me to go out and raise capital.
Mhm.
And that was when it really all started to come together, when I realized, oh wow, like I can do this. And then I spent basically all of 2018 flipping houses while working my full-time job. My job that I was working at really started to realize what I was doing. You know what I mean? And but at that point, I
Your
didn't
mind
care.
was gone at that point. You're
My
like, I
mind was
can't. Yeah.
gone. I figured out a way to automate a lot of my work, so I was still getting a lot of my work done. But I realized, like, okay, like I'm about to make more in my job, in
Right.
my part-time job flipping homes, than I am at my full-time job. And so, at the end of 2018, I left
Okay.
and started fixing and flipping full
That's
time. At this point,
that's
I had a
awesome.
good amount of flips under my belt, and
You felt a
I've been
lot more comfortable to
fortunate.
continue and push that forward at that point. And that's kind of how you were able
Exactly.
to.
And the nice thing was that I had my salary, my wife was working, so anything I was making off the flips, I was able to stash aside.
That's great.
So that gave me a good jumping point to say, you know what, I can do that. At this point, I was so sick and tired of where I was.
Hmm.
They wanted me to leave. I wanted to leave. We parted ways, and that was it. And since then, it's been an upward climb of, I think I did 17 or 18 in 2019, just under 40 in 2020, and it's almost doubled just about every year. And I wouldn't say doubled all the way through. We're now doing anywhere from 60 to 80 houses a year,
Awesome.
but our primary market is fixing and flipping. Heavy rehabs, we'll do new construction, a little bit of wholesale, but not much. But we're all in the Suffolk County market on Long Island.
Okay, and then going back to that transition, right? It's definitely gives you that comfort level when you got that other base income, someone else working over here for you to be able to say, "Hey, yeah, let's go take that jump," right? I went through and did everything wrong, and I just quit my CPA firm job with 30 grand in the bank and no income going. I had my first deal under contract, and I wanted to bang my head against the computer. I was in the most boring position of my life. I just couldn't deal with it anymore. And I knew if I threw myself to the wolves, then okay, cool, I'll go and hopefully swim. I sank, a couple years later, during 2008 when the market crashed. I quit in 2006. So perfect
Okay.
timing to be a genius for a year and then realize you weren't, so ego got in check, credit got hit, all the things that my whole ego was based off of,
Sure.
it was a great transition for me actually afterwards. I just had to take a punch in the face to get there,
Fair
and
enough. Yeah.
but being able to have that, do you think, how were you able to kind of, make that jump and feel comfortable with it where, you're talking about, hey, I got to put the money together. I got to learn how to find good deals and stuff. In the very beginning, when you first got started, even when you were working, for the job still, how did you say, hey, to find the money and find the deals while you're working there without a direct mail campaign at first?
So the first thing I did was, I took out, like I said, I took out a home equity line of credit
Okay.
in
So that's what
conjunction
you
with
utilize for your
in
funding source.
conjunction with hard money to do the first deal, right?
Okay, cool.
So there was that. I don't know what it was about that first deal, but that first deal gave me so much confidence to go out there and start talking to private money people. So right
Cool.
after that, I realized, like, wow, like I raised private money from family, not direct family, but close family friends
Right.
that I knew had money to invest. They believed in me. I gave them a good rate of return. I already had this project under my belt,
Hmm.
and so that allowed me to kind of take the next step. Now I had a few flips going on at once, and at that point, I started reaching out to people just in my local market to offer them the opportunity to invest. Group of people who still invest with me today, they put sums of money together and they invested on a project with me, all while still working my full-time job, mind you. You know what
Gotcha.
I mean? So at that point, getting the reps in that first full year where I was doing more, making more money as a flipper than I was working at my job, that just gave me like a good base. And then
Right.
it was a combination of, my own lines of credit, family, friends, outside investors, and hard money too. I was bringing hard money into the mix
Okay.
when I needed it. And that all together was kind of how I funded the first year of
Gotcha.
being full time doing deals. After that year, I pretty much transitioned completely out of the hard money realm, went straight into private money.
Okay.
The terms were better. It was just an easier
Right.
situation. But that whole time I was figuring out how to get more deals. How do I get more deals?
Right.
How do
And
I
I think what's important about that story is there's a lot of people in the same position where they're trying to get started. They just don't know what to do. And it really comes down to you went out and you developed resources to help you do that, right? Property sources, capital sources, and you had a consistent move towards developing those resources on a consistent weekly basis or monthly basis to reach out to new people and bring those resources to you to give you the power to then to take that action. Because really it's just about those, who's your team, who's your capital sources, how are you going to find the properties, what are the specific action items that you can take every single time to move each one of those things forward. And then of course, how do you get through the learning curve? Just like what you said, having a mentor in place that can show you, hey, don't be an idiot with your contractor, right? Don't be an idiot over here where these are the main areas where you're going to make mistakes. So having that kind of level of support along with a big community and resource development gives you the power to jump ship and get out and be successful doing that. A lot easier transition in my eyes, and probably one of the smarter decisions to make to get that going while you have consistent income so that you're not like dying like I did. You're being smart about it and calculated about it to keep that income flowing while you're actually producing over here, and getting that base of capital going so that now you don't need, hard money as much, right? You bring the private capital sources together. Hard money can be great and useful. At the same time, it's expensive. It's not cheap, right? So you want to develop those private money relationships. At the same time, sometimes those private money relationships run out of money. And so you need to have the hard money guys in backup position just in case, because those guys will fund, as long as it's in their box and you have a good lender and they know what the hell they're doing, then they're a good resource for you, even though they're more expensive, across the board, because that's their business. You're dealing with non-professionals that are happy with a specific rate versus the professionals that know what they're doing, that are going to put you to the ringer a little bit more than the private guys too. It's a harder transaction to get done, but once you understand the process, it's a great, thing to utilize, of course. At the same time, absolutely have to develop your private money resources there to get this going. And so, there's got to be a why though, right? There's got to be a, other than you just being drawn to this saying, hey, there's money there, what do you think, what's your underlying purpose as far as doing all this? Like for me, it was, hey, I got a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, and I got to keep pushing to teach financial education to them and learn it myself as best I can and be financially free, because then they have a chance to learn that from me. If I don't learn it myself, then how are they going to ever do this? And I didn't have my kids when I first jumped ship. It was more, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad was like, I need financial freedom. I need to be able to not work and trade time for money all the time. How do I do this? Right. Then I jumped into my doing what I do now in real estate and what I did previously with all these flips, and said, wow, I just traded my time for money like a million times on flips and stuff as well, which is tough. But at the same time, it's fixing and flipping teaches you how to become a specialist, how to put deals together, how to be creative and get creative financing done, how financing works in general. There's a million benefits. But what was your underlying why? What pushed you forward to say, no, dude, I can't just sit here behind a desk and do this crap for the rest of my life?
Well, the truth is what was important for me was that my kids saw me doing something that one, he enjoyed doing. Their
Yeah.
dad is doing something that he likes, and I still like doing it. Yeah, as the years have gone on, right, and you're doing more and more flips, it starts to get a little boring and monotonous.
Right.
But above that, what's super important for me is that that I was there for my kids. So I was
Right.
leaving the house because my job was about an hour plus from where I live. So it was in Queens. So I had a commute. I'd have to be in around like 7 o'clock. So I'd have to be out of the house by like 5:30 to beat the
Yeah.
traffic. And I was coming home at about 7 o'clock at night. So I was never around for my kids. And I knew like this wasn't going to be sustainable. Like I
Right.
wasn't going to be able to be around. So that was really important. I didn't want my kids to see dad at a place that he hated, being there all the time and never there for them.
And
So that was
miserable and
really
not being available for the kids because you got
that
those
was
obligations.
what really, really pushed me. Now, right, as I have the fix and flip business going, and I'm looking to grow, and there's certain financial tools that I know I need to improve on so that I can teach them. But the first thing for me was, how do I just get out of here?
That's
How
awesome.
do I just get the hell out of here, be around for them more, and do something that I actually like to do? So it was pretty simple,
Yeah.
but powerful at the same time.
It's amazing when what you just showed your kids though too about their ability of their father to not be afraid and take a jump like that and leap and go move forward. That shows them more than anything. And obviously being around them is everything as well. You know, you don't want to miss that time with them. And there's a
Uh,
lot of people like that that are in that position. I was one of them working at a CPA firm. You were working, you know, doing the legal route and stuff like that as well. You know, there's a lot of computer programmers and doctors and other CPAs and engineers and all different people that are in the same mode where hey, they chose a position because they thought that that would be good to give them a good salary, not realizing hey, that work sucks. It's not fun, it's not challenging, it's not pushing you to be the best version of yourself at all times. And I think that is the key to get people taking action and getting over that initial fear of doing this in the first place. So I
exactly.
so, and I know, recently, obviously doing 60 flips a year, you got to be running 100 miles an hour, going, wrangling people all the time, especially contractors, which we all love, I'll call it, and, dealing with all these different moving parts. And, I know you dialed in your health recently and you were a lot heavier at that time as was I. How has that benefited you from a business perspective, like being healthy now and kind of leading that charge with your family, man?
So a lot of it is mindset. So you think to yourself, well, if I'm doing something that I love, of course I'm going to be happy, right? And that's what I thought when I was leaving my job. Like, well, just as long as I'm not at my job every day and I'm doing this, I'll be happy. But the truth is, as you said, fixing and flipping homes is hard, right? And I'm fortunate. I work with good contractors. We have a great team, but it's real estate, right? And especially on the sales side of transactions, I can't control who the buyer is, who their agent is, who their attorney is,
Right.
who their lender is. All I can do is control me. And so about a year and a half ago, interest rates went up. Our market for a period of time kind of did like not an about face, but there was
Yeah.
definitely an
A
interruption, right?
softening immediately of the market. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was overly aggressive on a lot of houses that I bought. I shouldn't have bought them. I wound up getting punched in the face on some of them, but still, 2022 financially was our best year ever. But it would have been by far even better. We took some real hits on houses. At the
Right.
same time, I was having major difficulties with my son. I was having a major title issue on a house. Everything that you could possibly have happened that go wrong, stop work orders on homes, just everything go to shit.
Yeah. Punches you in
So
the face all at the same time. And you're like,
all at
oh,
the same time, and I emotionally was like a wreck,
yeah.
like a complete basket case, to the point where it's like I was like, I don't think I can even do this anymore. I was seriously considering taking
We all
antidepressants.
we all go through that, bro, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I was like, holy cow, right? And I kind of used the summer of last year to kind of get through a lot of it, overcame a lot of the challenges. A lot of other good things happened that helped balance that out. But September of last year, I was like, I was really caught. I got caught, and I can't really control the circumstances around me, but I can control me. What's the best thing that I can do? I was like, I got to take control of my health and my fitness. So that's when I met Morrow. After like a month of being into it, not even seeing a ton of results at first, I realized like, wait, this is sustainable. I can do this, you know?
Yeah.
And just those habits of, holding myself accountable, being there, going to the gym when I said I was going to do, when I was going to, sticking to my diet. I developed disciplines, right? And I developed the ability, even as entrepreneurs, yes, we're motivated, but there's a lot of times we're our own boss. And sometimes we
Right.
maybe give ourselves a little bit too much slack, right?
Yeah.
I don't need to do this.
Right.
Well, that really helped me develop and cultivate the skill of doing the stuff that I needed to do when I didn't feel like doing it, and embracing that
Huge.
temporary pain, right? So
Yeah.
that we can have long-term benefits. And so being consistent with my fitness day in and day out developed that habit. And then that habit basically translated to the business world, where I started attacking things that maybe I was putting off or didn't want to deal with, because I knew that I needed to deal with that short-term pain. And now I can tell you, a year later, right? Yes, we've had the benefit of the market still holding strong because of low inventory. I'm not going to discount that fact,
Yeah.
right?
It's been refreshing, at least for the moment, so
Yeah. So there has been that factor, but I isolated the people that I knew were A players on my team, got rid of the people that honestly I think were okay but not the best.
Yeah.
Consolidated operations, consolidated expenses. We're more profitable now than ever. And when situations arise, right, because I just feel so much better about myself, because I'm constantly happy with how I look and everything, my mood is just elevated. I mean, that's really no other way to say it. Like, my mood is just elevated, my attitude is better. So I still have the same amount of problems that I had a year ago, but I'm in a much better state to be able to handle it. And it's no secret that, we're going to have our most profitable year ever.
Right.
We're going to run more smoothly and more efficiently than we ever have been. And yes, we have problems, but they just don't seem nearly as insurmountable as they once did. So again, a lot of outside factors have contributed to it, but I don't think I'm in this position talking about this if I didn't take control of my health like I did either.
I think that you hit it right on the money with doing the things that you don't want to do and forcing yourself to do them anyways, right? I mean, working out is a prime example. Nobody, I mean, you can get into a workout and love it, but in the very beginning of that workout, your mindset is like, oh, I gotta do legs right now, and like lift super heavy weights. Like, nobody wants to do it all the time like that, unless you just, are that guy that's your focus nonstop, and you're doing other things. And being able to do that and separate yourself there, let alone what you're saying about being happier and in a better mood and more energetic. I mean, you actually draw people to you, good people, via that energy that's around you. If you're up, standing up with your chest high versus, slumped over, feeling overweight and just, like kind of hiding a little bit, it's a massive shift in the way people perceive you as well. Powerful or weak? Can I trust them or can I not trust them? Are they gonna be mentally tough or are they gonna break? Right. So and it's subconscious. It's not like they're thinking this in their, like immediately, but that's what's happening. And so dialing in your health for me has been massive, let alone going 100 miles an hour all day, dealing with the problems. I think, like, I had like a couple of weeks ago, like 12 problems before like noon on a Monday. And I was just like, oh, dude, like, let me go run or let me go like lift weights and, put this aside for a minute to like get this stress out. Right. And, without being in shape, you can't handle that. And you emotionally cannot handle the swings as well, to be able to actually guide it and be, I'll say, proactive versus reactive to that item that gets thrown at you, consistently, and say, USA, let me relax for a minute, so, So I think that's really important. At the same time, I do want to make a shift into some of the strategies and things like that to give people some more detailed knowledge on, hey, this is what a good deal looks like. This is what you're working on in your market, to be able to understand that this type of thing does work even in a low inventory environment. So I'm just curious, can you talk a little bit about the specifics of the asset class, the types of things about a deal that you really are looking for right off the bat on that smell test, and what makes kind of a good deal for you?
So I will tell you this: we have a pretty wide array of houses that we will purchase in terms of the price. We'll buy, a low price point house for us in my market's like 400,000, right?
Okay.
But we've done as high as $3 to $4 million luxury builds.
Okay.
I certainly have my preference on what I'd rather do, but we underwrite fairly strictly, so there's a lot of stuff that I pass on. But I can tell you, our focus right now, and what I have noticed, even though we're in a low inventory environment, the houses that are still selling and when we're getting those super competitive offers are what I like to call the box checker houses, right? They have, multiple, 3, 4 bedrooms, multiple baths, basement, yard, nice street. I think it's hard for somebody right now and that's where I got hurt last year when the rates went up. Some of the houses I had on paper, it made sense, but they were not box checker houses. They were houses that with weird quirks.
By a freeway, off of a major intersection, some weird
Yeah,
layout, that kind
weird
of stuff.
layout. Yeah. So what I have found is that if it's a cookie cutter house that checks all the boxes, and that could be in a low price point, that could be in a high price point, but regardless, it doesn't have any kind of major blemishes on it. A buyer is okay with paying a high price and a high interest rate. And if I were that buyer in this environment, if I had a house that had certain things that off my wish list, I don't think I'd be as inclined to pay what people are asking for, coupled with a 7 or 8% interest rate. So it's a lot easier for people to stomach. So when we're going for houses, we're looking for obviously areas that are in high demand, that have certain unique factors in a good way, that we know are going to drive a lot of demand. And then on top of it, we are obviously doing the right thing. We're pricing them right. We're even pricing them below what we see is on the market. So we're doing a lot of different things, though, that no matter
mitigate
what,
that risk.
we mitigate that risk as much as we can. But if there are situations with houses where we just know that we're just going to be met with a lot of objections based on what you said, layout. I actually find that roads don't have as big of a factor. Busy roads, believe it or not, don't have as big of a factor. One of the strange things that I've noticed in our market is that houses, because some houses are built on slabs here, the ones that are built on slabs versus the ones that have full basements, the full basements always sell much better. And people,
they want that extra space. Yeah.
They want that extra space. I had a house in a great area, great spot, in demand, no garage, no basement. Luckily, we didn't lose any money on it, but we barely made anything. But it was not an in-demand house. That same house, same square footage, same area, had a garage and a basement, was gone in a week over ask price.
Yeah. They want that space and all that. And I think that's really important to point out, when you're doing, when there's a change in a market, when there's a shift like that, when there's an up market, you're making, your mistakes are hidden because you're still, getting a top dollar for your price and stuff like that, right? So you get bailed out. In a down market, you better go project 5% less than market value in case it drops. You better look at those key things you're talking about your house in comparison to the others and what things are going to stop it from selling right away. Dialing in your rehab in detail, your timelines and your operational structure, all those things create major efficiencies in a down market that you got to pay attention to. I always say that, in a down market, you're going to see the ones that are not good operators having issues, right? And so it's hard to do that. And operations is not easy. How do you beforehand, when you get into an asset, how do you start your due diligence process? And what does that look like when you're diving in and getting all your data and your numbers and making sure that it's the right deal for you?
So for us, what we do is, we generate a lot of off-market seller leads.
Okay.
Typically, I work with realtors who sell my properties, guys who are really good at evaluating the market. They're heavily entrenched with the market. They're still working with buyers, which I actually think is really important because they're hearing what buyers are wanting. They go out, they'll evaluate the process. Now, our offers are made over the phone. New York's an attorney state, so it has to be done with attorneys. I can't put a contract in front of you, get it signed, and lock up the deal. It just doesn't work that way. So we just have an agent go out on our behalf, go there, take photos, give us an evaluation conservatively of what the house will sell for and what it needs, right? From there, we're able to basically work up a rehab figure. From that rehab figure, coupled with our ARV that the realtor has given us, we have a formula that we plug in, and that gives us what our offer is. Now, do we slide that around depending on the area where we know, hey, we can pay a little bit more, may not make as much, but we're going to get so many offers on this.
It's going to sell. Yeah.
It's going to sell. Absolutely. Do we sometimes stick to our numbers because we're in an area where we know it's going to take a little longer to sell? Absolutely. But that's basically how we underwrite it. Having done hundreds at this point, I know based on photos and what something needs, what it will cost. Of course, there is a buffer in there. And then we obviously find creative ways to potentially sell that house, because a lot of times, right, we'll look at a house and at first glance it looks like it's bad, but you realize, hey, if I do X, Y, and Z, this has things about it. It could be a basement apartment where somebody might use that basement apartment for additional income. Or we know, like, hey, if we can keep this rehab low and do only X, Y, and Z versus a full reno, we're going to be able to stay at this price point where there's no homes available right now.
Right.
That coupled with maybe some other beneficial factors, that gives us the ability to maybe pay a little bit more for the house, and it's paid off well for us. So those are just some things that we do when we're evaluating it, but that comes from experience. And I kind of threw myself out there, and house after house after house after house. And listen, I'll be the first to tell you, I had the wind at my back for a long time. That covered up a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
While also learning a lot. So now, as things become a bit more challenging, I've gotten my reps in, I've gotten punched in the face. So I'm in a much better situation to deal with this. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, I'm ready, willing. I know I'll go through whatever challenges come my way, but there's going to be things that I'm still learning, things that I didn't anticipate.
That's a healthy mindset to have too, because you have to not let your ego get a hold of you to where you think that nothing can permeate you, because that's how you take a hit again, or step out of your box and get lax or on your procedures. And I think the operations piece of a fix and flip, you got your marketing strategy, your the documentation, the KPIs, the cost per closed deal, all of these different metrics and systems that you have to have on the acquisition side. And then over here in the operation side, your renovation piece, your upfront due diligence, your market values, which are constantly changing, other costs or changes of the market, depending on the state that you're in. And then, being able to have proper quality control on the back end. And then you have your whole sales disposition cycle over here, which is another full system in itself. So being able to have the right team members and, have that right operational system will make or break you on any one of those things. And what's funny is I used to sell a lot of turnkey houses, fully renovated, tenanted with, management in place. It's already up and running. And the way a lot of people think that they want to be fix and flippers to start, but then they realize, oh my God, that's a lot of work, especially when you teach them everything that happens and they go, okay, can you just do it for me? Because I don't want to do it. Right. So it's a great way to raise capital, because people don't realize how much work it is. And there's ways to make just as much of a return or close to it by partnering with guys like you, or partnering with other operators and making money passively, where you don't have to do all of that work and learn all the processes and systems. You just have to vet you, right? And make sure that, hey, this guy knows what he's doing, or this team knows what they're doing with regard to that operational efficiencies, which is, super key. And operations is going to make or break you in a down market like this. So what are some of the big things you see operators doing that are just, destroying them? What are the big ticket items that you think people make mistakes, or what have you made mistakes on in the past, even, as I have on deals that really bit you, that you look back now and you say, okay, we had to dial that in. This was messed up.
So first of all, I think a lot of fix and flip operators are very greedy, right? So I've watched a lot of these guys. I have my own contractors, right? They have either worked for flippers before, or they work with me, and they might take an additional job from another flipper, and will still work with me, but they'll come back and tell me stories. They're like, yeah, one and done, never again with that guy, right? Because they try to nickel and dime them over $500,000, $2,000. The guys I know I have are really good. I know that they're really fair. And so when they come at me, there might be times where the number might be a little bit higher. More often than not, I let it go. And reason is, we're buying at a really good discount, so I'm making my money. They're allowed to make money. So I've given them that opportunity where they don't feel like I'm working with them. I'm not taking advantage of them. Right. That's super important. It's fostered relationships with these guys that when the shit hits the fan, they're there to help me out. I think a lot of fix and flip operators are penny wise and pound foolish.
They
You
nickel and
know,
dime their contractors, and then their contractors are not going to be loyal, and they go after the contractors that are cheap versus good.
exactly,
And then they
exactly.
take longer, cost more money anyways,
Yes,
and don't get the job done timely. And, like,
yes.
yeah. So big,
So
big,
there's that.
great
To
advice.
that point, I've also understood the limitations on my contractors. And one of the things that I realized was a big challenge for us, and I can't really blame them, was that my contractors were good at getting like 98% of the way there, right? And I wanted to put like a good quality product on the market, but there was that 2% that I was always missing. And there was sometimes like we would put the house on the market and we'd have a bad inspection over a lot of stupid items that could have been corrected.
Yeah.
And then we lost the deal. So I was like, all right, how do I deal with that? And so I've actually utilized, believe it or not, a lot of part-time guys in conjunction with my operations manager to fill those needs. And so what I do is, before a home is listed, we get a home inspector in. We're giving him a lot of volume. He gives us a really good price. He goes in there. We're not looking for a full report. Just let us know the problems that we need to actually handle.
Address.
He gives it to us. We'll get a top guy, right, from maybe a home improvement company that's making good money, but just wants to make some money, extra money. He'll come in at nights or weekends and kind of run through that whole list. I've taken my GCs out of the mix, unless there's something that they missed that was part of it.
That should have been done like majorly.
But if there's like a leaky sink that they installed, I'm just like, don't worry, we got it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that guy that you're hiring, the part-time guys, have that attention to detail focus, which is a rarity in the construction industry, because they get it 98% there and they're like, we're done, but you're not done yet.
They're not done. And it's also sensory overload. They're seeing the same house over and over. Now you come in with a fresh set of eyes, somebody that's there to look for the little BS details, and then they come in and do it. Then to kind of overlay that, I've got a guy that I have also part-time, but his job is, all he does is nights and weekends go around and check houses. So he's given us progress reports on current rehabs, but his value really comes in right before we list the house. So in conjunction with what the home inspector points out, he just goes in like he's just a regular buyer and looks around for everything that could be wrong. So with what the home inspector gives and what our property check-in person, I don't really have an official title for him, but we'll just call him the property check-in guy. Whatever it is that he sees, those two things together make a list, right? And then from that list, that part-time, maintenance guy comes in and does all that. And then that same property check-in guy goes back after it's all said and done, because even that maintenance guy might miss a few items, and he makes sure everything is done. So it's a pretty tight QC process where we very rarely have a deal lost because of an inspection. We might get inspection, repair rider requests, but they're typically minor stuff. That's the first thing. And then we don't really have any issues on the walkthrough. We used to have walkthrough issues all the time. You know what I mean?
You just gave people so much gold with this process, because it's one of the biggest challenges in the fix and flip industry is, and what it basically is, hey, contractor goes in, gets 98% there, full inspection done on this thing with all the, basically a punch list of everything that needs to be done so that there isn't a surprise from that buyer at the end, which will destroy your deal and make you relist, which then makes you a distressed seller. And a lot of realtors will tell you, hey, don't get the inspection. We don't want to disclose it. No, get the inspection so you don't have a surprise happening afterwards, and make sure that, hey, how great is that if you have a buyer, oh, we got an inspection, here's side-by-side pictures of everything in the report showing it's done, or that kind of extra disclosure even helps many times to soften people's mentalities. And then after you do that, their inspection, then you have your final punch list team come in, and then a secondary checker after that to check their work, make sure this is perfect before listing, and even going out a few times if they have to, because even if you put blue tape around the whole house and all those things, they're gonna miss. They just left the blue tape and forgot.
By the time a walkthrough has happened, that guy has been at the house 5 or 6 times. You know what I mean? And it might have taken 2 or 3 trips for the maintenance guy to do it. But at the end of the day, they're either working for us full-time. We have one guy that is more or less full-time, but then we have a lot of other guys that are like part-time that are a little bit more talented, so they can do some of that more complicated stuff. but it's been checked so many times that very, very rarely do we have issues through the walkthrough. If it is, it's some kind of surprise that we just didn't see, that no one had any control over. And even then, it's typically very, very minuscule. But that has allowed us to keep things very tight and very cohesive, so that you said, like, we don't have to put that house back on the market. We don't have to be able to, try to have a contentious closing. My wife is the attorney for the firm, right? Like, so she's at the closing. I want to make her happy. I don't want her at the closing table fighting with buyers over things that, now she comes home and she's angry. Right. So you don't want that. So we've learned to mitigate it. We're not 100% perfect, but we've learned to mitigate it a lot. But that took years and years of trying to figure out what worked and what didn't. And we just found that we brought in these key ancillary players that are really smart and talented. They're just looking for like a little bit of extra money, give them a detailed, focused task, and then kind of put that into our operational scheme, and it's worked out well.
It's funny how a simple process like that you could implement takes so long sometimes to learn what is going to work in the first place. And then, of course, it comes down to your team and saying, hey, we got one good set of contractors or a few of them on these projects. Then we have, the right people with the right eye over here. And if they're not the right people, you got to move them and transition to somebody new so that they actually can get it, because that's not a skill set. I mean, you can learn it, but at the same time, a lot of people just have that eye, right?
You either have it or you don't. Yes.
Right. So a lot of people, like, I'm really bad at that. I walk through and I don't notice all the little things like that, unless I'm like specifically looking at every little piece of the room, because I'm more like go, 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 go.
Yeah,
I shouldn't
same
be the
with
one
me.
doing that,
Same
right? So, but this has been absolutely awesome, man. What do you think is the biggest opportunity moving forward in real estate that you see on the horizon right now that people can take advantage of? I mean, it's a tough market, lack of inventory. What do you think is the opportunity in the future going forward?
So I still am very bullish on real estate, but listen, I could be wrong. But if you look at, back in 2007, I think we had 4 million homes on the market. Now we've got 1 million homes, and half of them are under contract.
Crazy. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and obviously population has grown. We've, had the millennial workforce come into play, the millennial generation looking for homes. And so I still, obviously this run up that we have is not going to continue.
Right.
But I think single family homes is still a fantastic, fantastic opportunity. I think if you can buy right and you put the right product on the market, that's what I'm good at. That's my bread and butter. That's all, honestly, I could really speak of. I couldn't speak about other asset classes. I think that's still a great way to go. Now, cautionary tale, it's now become cheaper to rent than it is to buy, right? I don't know where rates are going. I thought last year by this time, we were going to start to see a trend down. We started to see that in the first quarter of last year, and it's really been a slow upward climb back to now we're higher than, we've been in a long, long time.
And I
so
think,
I can't really.
Right. And, looking at this rate change, there's an initial shock that goes with this rate change. And then after that, though, you have, I personally think what's probably going to happen is, a slight decline in the market. Generally, it's totally independent on any market like California or Boise, Idaho, or in Austin, Texas, that had a crazy, horrible affordability, worse than anybody in the nation, are they're the ones that are going to take the biggest volatility hit in my eyes, even though there's still a lack of inventory across the board in these markets. But I think, and there's major inflationary pressure. We're talking about war now. We're looking at, more inflationary pressure. And so, real estate, because of affordability, may not necessarily rise because of that interest rate environment and affordability issue. But I think it may go sideways for a period of time, for a longer period of time, until inflation catches up wages to a degree where affordability becomes more in line, and then it may rise again. We could have a liquidity event, and the banks could fail, or some crazy thing that could happen, like Lehman crash. There was a liquidity crisis to start before. Granted, there was a lot of problems and, bad loans and, fraudulent activity that was happening all over the place in that period of time, which, kind of exacerbated the problem, of course, when the liquidity happened. But, and there may be another liquidity crisis that really takes this down for a period of time. But if you look, there was a major liquidity crisis for like 6 months, and then it bounced back to a degree, right? And there was a hard time getting appraisals because there wasn't a lot of appraisals for those 6 months, so it had some trickle effects for sure. And it took like 6 years to get to the bottom. It wasn't necessarily a major, because there was so many foreclosures and so many
Yes,
REOs. And I just don't see where that inventory is really going to come from when
exactly.
you are incentivizing everybody to stay in their homes with a 3% interest rate, right? And so I see that inventory still being a problem moving forward for the next 10 years plus, and then also inflation slowly catching up. But that what that means is the value of your real estate is really crashing in inflation adjusted terms. But if you have debt on that inflation and rents are slowly rising with that inflation as well, then you're decimating the debt. You're taking advantage of the inflation, even if your property value is staying the same, right? So just something to think about with regard to the market as a whole. But dude, this has been awesome. I really love the practical knowledge and the processes you've been helping everybody through. So if anybody is looking to try to jump ship out of corporate America into real estate, these are some of the practical tips and tricks you can do by being process oriented, resource oriented, and being able to get that right mentor in place that can help you move that along and push you forward to take that kind of action. So thanks so much, Jeremiah, for coming on. I
Absolutely.
really appreciate it. This has been awesome, and I look forward to doing more business with you in the future on the real estate side, man, and seeing what you're into even more.
Same here, man. Thank you.
Awesome. Talk to you soon. Do you want to learn how to create financial freedom in your life through real estate and take your investing business to the next level? If so, you can follow us in one of the following ways. First, you can take one of our free webinars on how to analyze property, how to raise capital for real estate, and how to market and find deals. Three of the key pillars to becoming a successful real estate investor. Number two, you can join us on our mailing list where you'll get tips and tricks on real estate investing directly to your inbox. And number three, you can take our 6-month real estate course that teaches you every aspect of real estate investing you can think of, and more importantly, create financial freedom in your life through real estate investing strategies that I teach. If you want a master's in real estate in 6 months, this course is for you. We're going to go over how to raise money, promissory notes, syndications, fixing and flipping, buy and hold investing, tax and legal structures, self-directed retirement accounts, financial education, how to run a business, how to market and find your deals, and most importantly, how to create that financial freedom in your life so that you can stop trading your time for money and create passive real estate cash flow that you can live off of. If you're interested, go ahead and click on one of the links below, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the other side.